Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Hungry Black Man here.
Hi, Jill Tracy. Good morning.
So today, guys, we are going to have a special guest in Miss Kathy Fernandez Rundle, who is running for re-election for the State Attorney's Office of Miami-Dade County. She's been in this seat for 27 years. She is the first Hispanic female to hold the position. She was also the chief assistant state attorney under Janet Reno. She created the state's first domestic violence unit, and there's uh, other things that she's done that have left its mark for her office. And on the flip side, there's some things that she's done that we have some very serious questions around, which is her handling of cases that involve police brutality, cases that involve death by the hands of law enforcement, and as well as some administrative things that we have seen that includes the usage of funds, rather the uh, appropriation of funds from her nonprofit. Uh, there are some other questions that we have as well. So today's going to be a very, very good show because Jill and
Interesting.
I are definitely interested to hear these answers as we had Melba Pearson on, who is running for that seat as well. So today's show probably should be shared on your Facebooks. So if you are a Miami-Dade County resident, or if you even a Broward County resident and you have Dade County friends, I would suggest that you share this live, given the fact that this is an individual who is very, very important. The position is very important to uh, our people here in South Florida, and I do think that this is a very important conversation. So,
And I will be doing my best to moderate your questions. So I'll be looking for them and I'll send Starix a note in case you have to. Oh, wait a minute. I don't know. Well, yeah. I guess I could just send it to you in private chat and
and I,
vice versa.
of
If
course,
if he's speaking or if I'm speaking and there's something that you want to add on to that, then put it in the comments. Because we have the Aisha's question. Well, you have them over there. I see them all. Oh, that's attractive. Um, I think you have them over there.
what in the
So
world? See that iguana running up here like that? Jesus Christ! I'm tired of them. I plan
listen, they're taking over. They're like, look here. We have been hiding up in y'all trees and grass and in this water long enough.
I,
This is our land, damn it, and we are taking it back.
that's crazy. So, guys, we have Miss Kathy Rundle about to come on right now. So we're going to go ahead and add her to the screen, and then we'll get started. Good morning, Miss Rundle.
Good morning. How are you today?
Hey,
Wonderful.
Kathy.
Hi, Joe. How are you? Good to see you again.
I know. How are you?
Good. We have to stop meeting like this or
I
no?
know.
So,
I know. Soon come. Right. This will all be over very soon.
yes, between the COVID and now the tropical storms are sort of looming. I just feel so bad for this community, and it's a lot of anxiety out there. We've been noticing it in Baker Acts and domestic violence.
Really?
And so I really feel for the community.
Yeah. A lot of interacting.
Yeah.
I would imagine because I mean that you've got COVID, you've got a lot of the unemployment money drying up today. That I would bet next month is going to be quite a test for this community.
It really is. I was talking to the head of our shelters, our domestic violence shelters, yesterday morning, again this morning. And, that anxiety, staying at home with children home, uncertainty with the future, economic question marks about jobs and how they're going to pay their rent, and all those concerns are just building up in families. And so we're seeing a lot of family violence and children not being in school. I think we might have talked about, we lack all those other eyes and access to identify children who may be in stress. So yes, it's a tough time for a lot of people in our community.
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to just kind of start the conversation off with folks. They definitely received an introduction on who you are and some of the things that the state has been able to accomplish, including the domestic violence division, the first creation, you being the first Hispanic woman to hold this seat in the state, as well as creating some other very impactful programs. However, because it's an election season, those are the things that are not mentioned as much, as opposed to some things that folks have questions on. So Jill and I wanted to have this conversation because we did have Melba Pearson on, who was incredible, who shared her experiences, and we wanted to definitely share some of questions that our audience raised for Melba, because that was the session. It's pretty much her answering questions from our audience. And so we asked our audience questions, and we have those questions. So I want to defer, Jill, if you don't mind. Jill is a lot more experienced at this than I am. So I'm going to have her kick it off. And then if you're okay with that, it's not an interrogation. It's not one of those types of interviews. It's literally just the questions from our audience, so that we can have a better understanding going into the polls and understanding what your office has done over the past 27 years, specifically to either impact our people and our community in a positive way, and those ways that aren't so positive, give you an opportunity to definitely expound on it, if that's okay with you guys.
Yes, and I definitely appreciate the opportunity to speak to the community. And yes, Joe is very well adept at this. She's very good at this. So.
Well, thank you. All right, that means a lot coming from you, because you talk to a lot of people. And I want us to start at the top, because one of the main things is, and that I was very curious about, is the idea of term limits. I could imagine, Sharks and I were having a conversation right before we came on. Imagine if you had to be president for 27 years. Like, you'd be ready to kill yourself right about now. Yeah. So I wonder, what is it that has kept your heart in the game for 27 years? Mm-hmm. And what do you see for the future, and how you plan to transition from this?
So just a little bit of background, because I think my passion comes from my family. Mm-hmm. When I went to law school, I studied at the University of Cambridge in England. And I had, at that time, really was interested in going to The Hague and, advocating against human rights violations that I was seeing internationally at the time. Mm-hmm. And I came home after I graduated, and my father said, why don't you go to the state attorney's office and do an internship while you're on your way going back to Europe? And I really wasn't that interested in it, but I went, and I realized when I was at that office that summer, and I realized the impact that it can have on the communities and those that are being injured by others in the community, that was a place for me. And it just, the day that I went there and I started getting involved and seeing how it interacted with my community, I realized I didn't have to travel across the world to go fight for human rights. I could do that right here in my community that I love so much. I never thought I'd run for office. My father ran for office a number of times, and he failed because in large part at that time, they weren't really ready for a Hispanic person, and he had a very thick accent that I loved. But they just weren't ready for that then. So that is also, I think, watching him and his struggles made me very determined as a Hispanic female, which there weren't that many females either. So, and it's been a blessing because it's given me so much. I really have a passion for the victims that I fight for, we advocate for. That office, really, Jill, is just full of so many dedicated men and women that work at great personal sacrifice. I mean, a starting lawyer now is at 50,000, then it was at 40,000, and they had all that student debt. So they're doing it because they believe in it, because it's a mission that they're on. And then when you meet with the victims and you can see how you actually impact them, how you give them a quality of life and some sense of justice, right? Those are very important to a lot of those that are victimized in our community. So over the years, what I've tried to do, me and the whole team at the state attorney's office, is develop specializations so that we know not just how to prosecute people, but we know how to access alternative pathways, like, for instance, those that are engaging in family violence because maybe they have underlying addiction issues, or they have underlying trauma that's never been addressed in their lives, and now they're acting that out. Mental health issues, mental wellness are all these issues. So we've developed pathways because really what you want to do is you want to solve the problem. You just don't want to prosecute somebody, put them in jail for a while. You haven't fixed that underlying issue. And then for the victims, we've also developed a whole safety net of services for them, whether it's shelters or it's direct services for them in terms of treatment for them, their family, their children. We've really developed all those pathways for both.
Right. And so on the other side of that, though, you have people who are either, just dregs on society that have done some of the most heinous things that a human can imagine. And you also have people who are, falsely accused and end up in the system. And you have to deal with all of that. And I think, I know most times when you have someone who had been falsely accused and then they spend an inordinate amount of time in, and then, Jesus walks in the room and they, are able to get justice. You carry that stain forever, though, or for a very long time. How do you deal with that and to move forward? Because you've done this for 27 years. So you've seen every possible, the kaleidoscope, just like that painting behind you, of everything that can happen in this space. And you have been able to hold yourself up to this community, regardless of, how blessed people have thought you were, or, waiting for your Wicked Witch of the West hat to come on. So how do you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a real balancing, Kathy.
Well, no, it's a very valid question, and there are a whole bunch of different themes involved in that question. So let me start with what you said about some of the unimaginable crimes. It is really true. We see, I always call it the underbelly of humanity. We see the inhumanity of humanity. Some of the things we see that human beings do to other human beings is unspeakable. So for those kinds of cases, we take a very hard line. That being, that's what incarceration is meant for, to incapacitate those predators that hurt, kill, rape, maim others. And so that's one track, and we're very strong on that because the community expects that. Community safety is always one of our preeminent priorities. Then you also mentioned those that are wrongfully accused. That's what I always say? We say we're the first line of defense. So when cases come into us, it's our responsibility as prosecutors to analyze what the police did, to make sure all the constitutional safeguards have been met, and if there's an accusation or a doubt as to who the offender is, that's our obligation to do what's right. And I'm giving you just a couple of examples of that. I don't know if you remember Biscayne Park, and I'm trying to use recent things that might be fresh in people's minds.
People's minds, yeah.
So Biscayne Park, there was a police chief and his major who directed his members of his police department. He had a whole bunch of burglaries They were what we call unfounded. They didn't know who did it. So they would actually target primarily African-American males and immigrants. And then just sort of, once they get arrested for something else, they would tag on and say, oh, they also committed these crimes. And when we discovered that, we did two things. One is we worked with the U.S. government, the U.S. Attorney's Office, one of their lawyers and our lawyers put together a case against the police chief, of course, and his major that was directing them. But we didn't stop there because that's not enough, right? Then went into all of the arrests that had occurred, and we scoured each one and looked at them and ended up dropping charges on, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but something like 56 of those that had been wrongfully accused, both felonies and misdemeanors. And that's our job. That's our job to do that. And sometimes when we have to go back and we look at a case and we either discover a witness has lied or a witness is mistaken. Sometimes witnesses really believe that's the person that did it to them. But then we discover through evidence, DNA evidence or other evidence that arises, even if the case is pending, it's our responsibility as prosecutors to make sure that we get that just outcome. And so we go in through those cases and we drop them if necessary, of course. One thing, a couple of years ago, I started something called the Justice Project. Now other people are calling it wrongful conviction integrity units, and they're popping up all over the country. We've had that for many years. And so people know, Defense Bar knows, they can access us and we review those cases. And if there's a wrongful conviction, then we right that wrong. And that's something that we have to do, and we do.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, State Attorney Rundle. So I'm going to phrase it in a manner that it doesn't get granular because I don't want to be bogged down with the nuances of the question. So there is a lot of anger that came about from the Rainey case. There was a lot of anger that came about from the case of the Hialeah officer. There was a lot of anger that came out of the case with Diamond Loving and that officer. There was a lot of anger that came out of several cases over the years where officers were unfortunately doing very horrible things to people, and specifically the heinous crime that we feel happened in the Rainey case, right? What has been the barrier in the 27 years that you've been in this office of actually prosecuting and actually taking these folks who have done these horrible things to task? What would you say, and to speak on those cases would be definitely helpful for our audience, and we have a lot of viewers right now because folks are really concerned about this. What would you say has been the impediment of your office successfully prosecuting these officers or law enforcement individuals when they've done these horrible things?
Okay. So first of all, I do understand the anger and I do understand the frustration, especially if the complexities of the criminal justice system aren't understood. Okay. And I get that. So let me start with the Rainey case. So first and foremost, let me just say the responsibility of a prosecutor, our constitutional, our ethical obligation is we have to follow the law and we have to follow the evidence.
Sure.
And based on those two things, if the law and the evidence are there, then we must proceed. If it is not there, we can't just say, oh, we don't like what happened or it doesn't feel right, so we're just going to throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. That is not appropriate. And nor is that what you want in a prosecutor. So let me start with Rainey. And because Rainey's been really a difficult one to understand. And that's because the photographs and the concept of someone being placed in a shower and being burned to death is a horrible concept. No human being can accept that. And you look at those photographs and it really does put into question what happened. Mm-hmm. But under the law in Florida, and it's not just here, the state's law says that these deaths are to be examined by what we call a medical examiner Some places in the country, they're called a coroner. But the medical examiner is an independent office. It's an independent forensic pathologist. They don't work for me. They don't work for anybody. Sort of titularly, they work under the mayor's office, but they are created by law. And it is that entity, it is the medical examiner who has the legal responsibility to determine the cause of death and the manner of death. And so in the Rainey case, the medical examiner conducted fire rescue. We take Mr. Rainey, took him to the medical examiner's office, and the medical examiner then conducts an autopsy and does toxology and does all kinds of different things. And in that based on that evidence, the medical examiner determines whether or not it's a homicide or not. And in Mr. Rainey's case, the medical examiner determined that it was a homicide, that it was an accidental death caused by, and then she goes on to talk about some physical ailments he had and being confinement in a moist area, all of those things combined, but it was not a homicide. And even the medical examiner even went on to say further that there were no burns on his body, and particularly said that to his feet, there were no burns, and actually showed the detective shortly thereafter, you look at his feet. And so, with that evidence, my hands were completely tied.
So, State Attorney, this is the part that I follow up to that, right? So, there was apparently other autopsies done by the police union, the police union, as well as a civil suit that said, that kind of negated what the medical examiner's office said. I guess the question I'm asking you, and let me know if this were possible or not. Given the fact of the profile of the case and the heinous nature of the way the optics looked, could your office have forewent using our medical examiner and use someone else? Could that have been an option for your office, or that wasn't an option?
Not really, because again, let me go back to the law. The law is that the medical examiner determines that.
Okay.
And so for the criminal arena, that we're tied to that whatever that decision is by that independent body, we have to live by. Now, that doesn't mean that in the civil world, and I know sometimes I sound like I'm getting in the weeds, but I'm really trying to separate. In the civil world, civil lawyers for civil cases or administrative cases, you can go and seek out other opinions, and you can hire experts to present a countervailing position or another opinion. But in terms of the criminal arena, we can't do that. And might I just also add that, the 4 correction officers are African-American males that work very hard, and their families are all impacted by the decisions that we make. So for us to go outside of the law, to make a decision that's contrary to what the law says and what the evidence is being told to us by a chief pathologist would be so inappropriate. Also,
so let me ask you something. Okay, I got a question.
Okay.
Because I know you're short on time.
Okay.
But you've seen those pictures.
I have. I know.
That is above and beyond
I understand.
Literally human. So in an instance like that, where does your authority end? Like, was there, if you had seen, let's just hypothetical, you saw that, you were like, there's no way in hell this happened by accident. This was deliberate. They left this man in the shower too long. Look at his skin, it's coming off of his body. I need more answers than this. Is there any way in your authority you could have done anything in his case? Or are you saying that when the medical examiner says this is what happened, this is the law, Kathy's office is to follow this, take this to court, and get the job done, period? We don't need to hear from her. Is it that black and white, cut and dry?
Yes, it is.
The only way for that family then to get justice is if they felt they didn't get justice, what would the family have to do in order to rectify that situation?
So the answer to your first question is yes. Exactly as you said, period, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
And believe me, I look at those photographs and I understand the reaction to that. The medical examiner did, Jill, say that what we are looking at, sometimes what we're looking at isn't actual, right? And what she explained that to be is skin slippage. That was her words. So when he was lying there waiting for fire rescue and they were trying to treat him and turning him over, his skin had passed. The skin is the first organ that dies, apparently. And so that's when they lifted him up, that skin had slipped off. And so I understand why people...
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I know.
Like, I just said this man's skin slipped off. But I mean, and that's the thing, right? Is that you understand the complexities of your humanity in doing this job. And at the same time, you understand that your constituents are like, okay, I'm not trying to hear none of that. So that's why I'm asking you, we can't really do anything about that case right now. But in the future, if something that heinous happens and you are the family or you're the community going, this has got to stop. Can't take any more of this. What could they have done in that moment that could have moved the needle so that they felt they got justice? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you're right. And they did. They sought their justice in the civil arena, right. and hopefully they felt like they got justice. One other thing, if I could point out, in that case, as we do in almost all of these in custody deaths cases, we send all of it to the Department of Justice. They get the full report. So if there's something we missed or there's some, civil rights violation, which is different, right? A civil rights violation, they can take action. As far as I know, they didn't do that either. So they're like us. They're stuck with that decision by the medical examiner. As hard as it is, and believe me, I'm feeling like, people are thinking I'm making that decision.
Right, but Kathy, right.
Jill, let me hop in for
making that decision.
I know we're like, she has like 10 minutes left. So I'm trying, there's so many people with so many questions, Ms. Rundle, and this race is so important to our community. Yeah. So I'm trying my best to get those questions in. When you talked about the fact that your office, or any office for that matter, wouldn't rush to judgment and wouldn't be anecdotal in their research and making sure that the law is being followed. One of the things that I noticed, and it kind of plays on what Jill talked about, is the DeAndre Edwin Charles arrest. This young kid was 15 years old, and he was arrested on what many felt was anecdotal information. What your office cited was DNA. And then after a year of that child sitting in jail and literally having his life ruined, the state attorney's office dropped the charges. And I think that the optics of that, right? And someone that's of the Black community, the optics of that was extremely, it was a lot to be imagined, right? Because in one space, it's like, well, my hands are tied. I can't do anything. The law prohibits me from doing this. We have to do our due diligence and so on and so forth. And then when a rabbi is killed, you made an arrest less than a week. Mm-hmm. And so I think that optic was very, very problematic for so many folks, because it looked as if what Jill just shared with you by, is there anything that can be done to not just appease like the bloodthirst, but to show that we are being as diligent, as transparent, and empathetic to the victims and the families of the victims, So yeah. I just wanted you to kind of talk about that, like the optics, because in 27 years, it seems a bit unique that not one officer was charged and convicted of a crime.
Okay, so there's a lot in there. So first of all, I'm really glad you brought that case up, Starks, because that's a prime example of what a good prosecutor's office does. So first, one thing, we don't make the arrest. The police make the arrest. So the police arrested who they thought was the offender in that case. We get the case, and then as we do our research on the case, we look at some of the evidence and we're not convinced. And we discover that there's a piece of evidence that controverts him being the person. So what did we do? We didn't proceed with the case. We did exactly what you would want us to do. We immediately dropped the case based on that evidence that we discovered and said, no. We don't think this is the right person. And we immediately, I mean, the police weren't happy, but we're not there to make people happy. We're there to do what is just. So that's a prime example. And I'm so glad you brought it up of what Jill and I were just talking about. That's my responsibility. If we discover whenever in the case, whether it's
But it
pre
took
or
a year. It
Well,
took a year. It took a year. That's a really long time.
we discovered it when we discovered it, and we acted upon it as soon as we saw it. We're the ones that pursued it. We're the ones that took that action and dropped the case because it was the right thing to do. And so I think that's a good example of what we should be doing and how we actually did it. So Starks, can I then go on to the second point that you made about not prosecuting police officers and correctional officers? So there's two different groups I'd like to talk about because they do get confused. First, the notion that this office does not prosecute police officers and correctional officers that cross the line, that abuse others, that commit any kind of a crime is just false. Since I've been state attorney, since you mentioned 27 years, during that time, I have prosecuted, my office has prosecuted over 500 police officers and correctional officers for committing a whole variety of crimes, including those that cross the line in an abusive or misconduct way towards either someone who's restrained, or it's a domestic violence, or it's a DUI, no matter what crime it is, official misconduct. And you just saw this year, we had like 3 or 4 of them this year. Body-worn cameras are helping us a great deal, are helping the prosecutors a great deal. And so we prosecuted about 4 or 5 just recently, and it was reported in the Herald in February, and then again subsequently, that it's not, we've been prosecuting cases, we don't win all of them.
Is the Hialeah case one of those?
No, that was not. So let me break it up.
I'm sorry.
So we do. So that whole notion out there that we don't is just false. In police shooting fatality cases, okay, which is I think that other group, this is a very difficult barrier for all of us. And I just want the audience to understand that there are structural barriers that exist in the law, and it's not just this office, it's in Florida. So in custody deaths, shooting fatalities, since Lozano, our office has not prosecuted one of those. And no one other than one conviction in the last 30 years in Florida has there been a conviction for an on-duty fatality shooting. And a lot of that has to do with the law. I can't just leave this office, right? And the last conviction was 5 years ago out of West Palm Beach, where they actually had a recording, and they did charge and they did get a conviction. And so if you look at that, you have to say, so, well, why is that? A lot of it has to do with the law that gives a lot of latitude to police officers on duty to protect when they can shoot, when they can use it's justified to use deadly force. And a lot of those cases, that's exactly what happens. The law says you have latitude to use excessive deadly force, or for that matter, just even in injuries, to use excessive force. And so that's one of the things that we talked about the other night, Jill. One of the reforms has got to be legislative reforms, because as long as the law is there and honest prosecutors are going to follow the law and follow the evidence, then we're going to constantly have that barrier. So I'm hopeful that with the appetite now for reforms that we've been talking about, everyone's talking about reforms, and now is the time, even the legislature, and having some conversations with my legislative friends, they get it. For instance, I'll give you one simple example, fleeing felon. Florida has a fleeing felon. So in other words, what that means is the police have the right to use excessive deadly force if it's a fleeing felon. Georgia doesn't have that law.
Right.
Not even Georgia has that. So that's a very simple thing that we can go fix if we all want to, if we all have the will and the timing is there. I was just reading yesterday, there's like 167 different reform bills pending in the United States now towards reforms. And I think this is a good opportunity. And I'm so happy we're having these discussions and I want to come back even after this election, because I think there's a lot of education.
We might need you to come back before,
Okay.
because we have so many questions on like marijuana.
Okay. All right. Okay, real quick, Starks. On marijuana, I've declined to prosecute marijuana cases for some time now. So
wonderful.
Please welcome me back. I'm sorry this was so short. I hope I was able to answer some of your questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, the depth of the questions and what you just mentioned is going to come, as you said it's going to come up in the Brooks case in Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
That's right around the corner. And I think, Kathy, one of the most important things is we first want to thank you for being a part of this forum.
Yeah.
Because it is having these conversations that people can start to unpack, because you are the state attorney. So whenever anything goes wrong, it's the her fault, period, end of story. We're not trying to hear nothing else. And so I think we are going to have to unpack that. And I think you're right. We are at a really good time to do that.
Yes.
So yeah, I hope that we can have you back before the election. To be able to get into a little more, because when I tell you they are 38 hot over here, and Starks and I'm going to have to deal with them right now.
I know. And trust me, that's why I took the time out on fairly short notice to do this, because this conversation is difficult, but it's important.
But it's very important, and it's very necessary.
And I appreciate it.
And I will say that, I hope that some of the people on the chat, pull some of the perspective from knowing a little bit of Kathy's background. When you said that about your dad, and then you became the first person in your family, not only a woman, but Hispanic, to hold this office, that puts a whole nother picture on who you are and how you're handling yourself in that space. I would love to get a group of women together and we have that conversation.
I like that. That's great. That would be great.
But before you head out, I know you're super pressed for time. So I wanted to just share with you, if we are able to get you back on, one of the things is that I'm looking at the comment section, and folks feel that some of the answers were very exhaustively explained. However, they wanted to be a bit more succinct, in the sense that I'm just trying to really deal with the issues that are uniquely affecting the Black community, that the state attorney's office is literally at the helm of either removing suffering or compelling suffering. And so I think that for you to hear those cries, if you will, is really important. So if you were to come back, I would like to be able to kind of maybe send you the questions so that you can have an understanding of, definitely from our audience, right? Yeah. Not from the host, but from the audience, because I'm looking at it and they feel as if the questions that they would like to be answered were not necessarily answered, but it was more so definitions of explanations as opposed to answers. And I think that that's where I would like to see the next conversation. If we can, it would be really helpful.
Well, I think that, a lot of our audience is just is of the mind that this is black and white. There is no gray area in between. And unfortunately, Kathy started in the gray space.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that sense. It's very difficult, but it's that there's so many in here that
I know she has to go. She has to go, Joe.
Yeah. All right, babe.
No, yeah. I get it. I get it. I understand. And you know what? It's my responsibility to answer those questions to the best of my ability. And I know not everyone's going to always agree with our decisions. And sometimes we're not perfect, right?
Of course.
We're a big office, and sometimes we do make mistakes. But it is important to address that. And I owe it to the community. I work for the community. I work for all of you. So I'm very happy to come back as often as it's going to take to talk about these issues, pre and post, okay? One last thing I just want to leave your listeners to. When you talk about passion and compassion, we also have to keep in mind our victims. there's an overrepresentation of minorities in our victim population.
Mhm.
And that is something that we work with all the time. And so that's what drives us to do this tough work that we do. So I also want that to be part of the conversation, because there are a lot of communities here that say, please protect us better. Our young men are dying from gun violence. We need you here. So, it's always about a balance.
And I think at the core, that's what all of this is that we expect you to protect and serve, and we feel like that's not happening. So, the anger, like every time we think this is going to be it, nope, that's not it. Damn. When will we ever get justice for all of this? That's what it is. And somehow we all have to unpack it, because we all got to live here. So we got to work this out. Yes. So I thank you for being open to helping be a part of working this out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay.
So we're going to definitely have to have her back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, we couldn't, I mean, I think it was good that she was able to come and kind of, get a vibe of the room, but you can't answer one thing fully and really from her perspective, and, and us being able to have crosstalk in a half hour. You just can't. We take 3 hours to have a simple damn conversation.
I mean, I think that in the 27 years that office has been there, I'm really interested in hearing. I just think it's so unique, right? Are we so unique and so legally special that not one officer, not one? I mean, and she did talk about the fact that her office had prosecuted some, and so the high-profile cases, they seem to have gotten off, and she really didn't talk about the Hialeah case at all. And I know a lot of folks have an issue with that. And
that case. Well, I mean, and that's one of the other things in terms of, which she's been in there 27 years. We can't tackle everything, but we do need to, when we do get her back, we need to deal with the things that, the cases that really we feel were the most egregious and did the most harm to the balance of power. Do you know what I'm saying? She's not going to answer all of them. Kathy is in 27 years, she done learned a lot about how to answer questions. And maybe not say a whole lot at the same damn time.
I think that at the end of the day, people on the comment section are saying things like fluff, that she owned this interview.
That's the whole thing. And it's not. That's why. Let me tell you, for somebody, those of you over here, some of you, most of y'all, whatever, right? It is a delicate dance to this, right? So if we just came out the door like, bitch, you are fucked up, and this is why. A, B, C, D, E, what you got to say? She'd have just dropped off. She'd have gave us some nice fluffy shit. And then like, okay, wow, look at the time I have to go. Thank you. Do you know what I'm saying? That's like, I mean, it's like being that, I won't use the name, but every man on here knows if you forgot to go to Publix and you walk in the door and she all up in your mouth, you about to leave and go have a beer with the boys. Same thing with a woman. If you come home and this nigga like, where's my food? This, that, and the other, this, that. Oh, I'm about to give you a minute to get over all of that. You see what I'm saying? It's like a relationship, and you have to build it. You just can't come out hitting a bitch over the head.
So what I mean, my style of asking questions is always to get you to be honest. And I think that the way that when they said we only had 30 minutes, I'm trying my best to get her to speak on the cases that I think is a big problem for us. And I do think—
You said, I forgot exactly what words you used, but you were basically like, without all that other shit, just tell me the truth.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that's—
and that was good. I mean, I like that.
I really wanted her to be a bit more, I'm not saying she's disingenuous by any sense, but I'm saying I want her to be a bit more sort of genuine, understanding, because she talked about how on the other side, the victims, and we understand that dichotomy that you have, right? However, understand that many of the victims of gun violence and crimes in the community are disproportionately Black people. And so you're now talking about a vulnerable population that's experiencing these things that now your office seems to not necessarily have a good pulse on what's really, really occurring when it comes to the perception, the realities, and also how our realities are intertwined with the perception. And so those things are so different and they're so convoluted that, yeah, these are complicated things. And I saw that on the side, some people were upset and they were like, well, she's owning this interview and all this other stuff. And they're not understanding that this woman, I don't know. I mean,
there was a couple of people. And Michelle, that's why I said you need to bring Michelle Smith-Jones in. I would have loved for you to have brought her in on
at the same time with Kathy Rundle.
Yep.
No, you just said that you didn't want to have a situation where
because see, sometimes, like I said, it is a very delicate dance, but sometimes you have to be face to face. I mean, and this is as face to face as we getting lately with a person to be able to, like, because either unless you are batshit crazy, you got to appreciate somebody else's humanity. Somebody else got a job, and Michelle's a politician. You know that there are limits.
That's the thing.
You got what?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, everybody in here, we're all in positions where you know that there are certain limits, and there's certain things that you can say and do that are going to go well. It might get you closer to the truth or what you really want. And other shit, they're just going to like block you out, not even listen to what the hell you got to say. They will just shut down. Do you know what I'm saying? You have to, when we are in the pursuit of justice for people that we feel have been wronged. And I'm not going to get that. If you come in the door and I just beat you over the head, you are just going to tune me the fuck out. And then eventually you're not going to take my calls or you're not going to.
But then I think the biggest problem, guys, is that the goal of interviewing candidates is to provide a window into how they operate and their operations, how it impacts us. And so for me, that's what I wanted her to focus on. And I wanted her to understand that. And when she comes back, that, this woman is definitely someone that is very intelligent. She has been around for a very long time, and she's been able to be successful in that space. And so at 30 something years old, I have a right to ask these questions. I have a right for her to explain herself. But what I won't do with anybody is be disrespectful. What I won't do is make, I need to be able to get her to explain herself, because
you need if I can help you with that one, you want her to be in a place where she respects you to the point that she will explain herself.
Well, I don't
get somebody to do something they have no intention to do. Do you know what I'm saying? So you want to approach her in a way that she will respect you to the level you respect her and be honest with you and not blow smoke up your ass.
Yeah, and I think I think her answers for many people was just that. She was pretty much like, I'm not gonna say like white splaining, but like it was equivalent to like what we call white splaining. It was
but wait. Do you understand white splaining?
Yes.
Can you read through the lines of white splaining?
Yes.
Then that's what we have to do.
Understood. Because she gave good answers, to be honest with you. She gave good answers.
And because
the law, right? And that's the problem. Based off the law. And that's the thing. Like, that was the question that you asked, that I was like, these are great answers for lawyers, but it's not great answers for Black people who were just everyday residents who are asking you, why the fuck wasn't those people put in jail for boiling that guy's skin off of his body? But that's why I said, because
she did the whole medical examiner thing, and that's why I said, okay, after the medical examiner says X, Y, and Z, and it goes up the chain, what can you do? What does that family need to do to get justice? Because clearly it's not in under your purview. And that's what she said. Yep. Once they said that, then I accepted. She basically said, I accepted the medical examiner's proof, and based on my limitations, this is how far I could go with that. Now the backup was, then what does the family do to get justice? Because you are not that point of contact.
So I think that
no, go back to Anissa.
She said what you just said. And I agree with Anissa, and she's so young to see that, and I totally agree. And I think that was the thing. Like I think Ms. Rundle, as opposed to Melba, one of the things that and you know, we can't advocate for. I'm not in the business of using this platform to advocate for a particular candidate. I will use my personal platform to do that, but this show is not. That's not what we do. And so we now open an avenue for you to advocate. Now, what this show will do is advocate on the side of its audience, which is Black America. And so asking questions to an individual who is in the office, and guys, even though this woman has a lot to be imagined for a lot of different things, if she wins re-election, that is someone now that we are going to have to, at the end of the day, deal with. And if Melba wins, then that's someone that you'll have to deal with as well, which whatever that brings with it. And so I do think that Melba is coming off more empathetic. Melba is coming off a bit more understanding. And she is coming off, regardless of race, as someone who is going to not necessarily explain things, but to listen. And I think that that's something that is a big difference, that when you really care about something, you're listening. If you give me a template response, if you give me the textbook response, you are now approaching me more as if I am a student than someone that is a concerned resident. And I know that there's a level of understanding and education that goes behind that, but let's shorten that, right? Let's just say, hey, look, there's legalities that do X, Y, and Z, and let's get into the answering of the actual question so that people who are tuning in, they're able to truly understand the person that is in the position and not the textbook statute definition of what.
Right. Listen to who she says she was. She's a tactician first. And she got a lot, there's a lot of other layers that are making her that person as definitive, you know, the way she feels like she has to lay out the facts as she knows them. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, and Melba comes from a more empathetic place of understanding. Like, I feel your pain. Trust me, I feel your pain. And this is what should have happened. And when I'm in office, this is what will happen. You know what I'm saying? Kathy is trying to defend all the shit that she's done. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying all of it is bad, but we have to understand from where they're standing, where their conversation is coming. If we could think of anybody, any politician who ever came and laid down their complete honest truth, who didn't get caught with a pipe in their mouth or a prostitute between their legs, then please put their name in the comment box.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
So again, it is up to us to create a space where people feel that they can be their most authentic and tell the damn truth, and that we can have definitive conversations about them, what happened, how it affected our communities, and what are you going to do going. If you get elected again, we can't have that foolishness now. These are the things that we have lined up that said, these were no-goes. And there was now there's nothing we can do about what happened, but going forward, this is what we want to share with you so that we can't come back this way again. And you say you didn't know, or this and that and the other. That's where we want to be. So regardless of how this, I think people now, what is those? I see forensic dentist. I study forensic dentistry, and she is bullshitting us. Media. What she didn't? Oh, she didn't win anything. I see that a lot. She didn't win anything in terms of she wasn't elected by us in that office. Is that what you?
I mean, if you think about it, this is the season. What president?
You didn't have the questions. Somebody said, "Don't give her the question." We didn't give her the questions.
I think I said I would give her the questions moving forward.
Oh yeah.
I said I would because it's going to be helpful now because it's going to be too much.
Exactly what you want to know. Yeah, that gotcha. You know, it looks good and it gets good clicks and people pass it around. But when we're talking about really getting to the core of the issue, not just getting people to, oh, they got that bitch. That's not what we're trying to do.
No.
This is a long game. And, real change. And think about it, y'all. We just buried John Lewis. I just had this conversation before we came on.
Because you are openly supporting the opponent and being vocal about her office and handling your brother's case. Yeah, I think Jesse has a good point here. And that's what I think Joe Biden's doing the same thing, to be honest with you. It's just what Jesse said.
Yeah. I agree completely.
And so, yeah, I think that
I agree.
I think moving forward, right? Like we'll bring Melba back, and and then we'll bring Kathy back because whoever wins the election, right? Whoever wins the election, this show probably was one of the first shows to have Kathy Rundle on just being her, just not having a debate, not having this, but really asking her, and I learned things about her that I didn't know, so I think that
and Amy is saying she won this round, but she's not winning on 818. How did she win this round, Amy?
Because you didn't cuss her out.
Oh. Okay, well, that's not gonna happen.
I
remember. Those of you who know me, I did that before. Okay, that shit don't work. The goal is to change the trajectory of something that we feel is wrong, not just to have a 24-hour cycle of being retweeted because I said something offensive to the state attorney. Shit is over. Okay.
At this point, I'm not begging anyone to have empathy, humility, or value my life. Katherine has set the precedent for how people will vote in the upcoming election. When she is voted out, she should refer back to this live stream. She insulted everyone's intelligence, suggesting we don't or can't understand. So what's interesting about that, Tracy?
Right. Yeah, I want to comment on that too.
Okay, yeah, what's interesting about that, Tracy? In my mind, right, as an intelligent person, I felt that way, but I had to remove myself from being an intelligent person or a person who because I'm nowhere near as knowledgeable on the law as some of my friends who are lawyers or whatever. And I had to remove myself from that for the average person who might not have known any of that. And I think that that's what Kathy was attempting to do, but she needed to understand that our audience, Tracy, is definitely an intelligent audience. And we understood that going into the conversation. And so we could have done, I guess, a better job.
But then you told her that you didn't want to get all into the weeds and stuff. So
she stayed
there. Huh?
She stayed there, though. That was the problem.
But that's that. Okay, but every interview you've seen with Kathy, that's what she does. She gets in the weeds and she stays there. So you got to get in there with her and pick through the grass too. Be like, oh, okay, well, what you missed this over here. You missed that part. Do you see what I'm saying? And then lift it higher. why did she come to the 7-year-old's house who died but never supported no other grieving families? Probably because it's an election year.
Yeah. So what I don't do, what I don't do is like those are conversations that we can have like amongst each other and like
Right.
talk about that. But like that's what all these politicians do. And the thing is that the thing about Rundle is that a lot of our politicians, like for instance, I am upset with Commissioner Edmondson, and I'm upset with Mayor Carlos Jimenez. I'm upset with Mayor, Commissioner Monestein. I'm more upset with Mayor Jimenez than all of them because he's literally allowing people to die. His administration to me is extremely segregated, and he has done nothing for Black people. He's done nothing for the Black community here in Miami-Dade County. I think Carlos Jimenez has been one of the worst mayors that we've ever had. And so I don't think that people give him enough smoke. And I think that because Kathy Rundle's a woman as well, women always have a harder time. So we sit there and we let this man, Carlos Jimenez, just get a pass and no one attacks him. But Kathy Rundle, it's a lot to be imagined with her administration, at least in my adult lifetime, because this is a woman who, Jesse's on here. We went to high school together, and Kathy Rundle was in office when I was 10, so I was 10 years old. And so how different is Miami-Dade County's criminal justice system as a result of having this woman that's been in office since I was 10 years old? And I just, because I'm not involved, right? All these folks who have been arrested, or who have family members who were arrested and dealt with these things, thank God I've never had to deal with the state attorney's office in that respect, right? But I wanted to, really ask her that, and I knew that would have taken a very long time. But I wanted to just ask her, and I did. But she, and she did. She did some good work, and it's around certain things that creating the domestic violence unit, the drug court, working with the county to do that. So there are things that have been done. Like the woman, I don't feel I should say like, oh, like this woman's evil, and she's. I have said that. I've called her wicked on my platform, my individual platform, because of the heinous crime of the guy having his skin boiled off, the Hialeah incident, and not taking these, and Dima Loving, right? That guy that wrestled her to the ground down south. That should have been fired and arrested. And so my thing is, and that's why I gave her that dichotomy, because when the Jewish community was seeking that blood, oh yeah, the cop. And it was easy for her to go, well, the cops arrested it. Like, come on, Kathy. Like, don't do that.
Well, okay. But so in that, I thought that was great, right? Because in that case, you know in your mind what happened, right? And an authentic answer.
She gave us a smirk. She gave us a smirk.
Right. You got it. You knew where she was. You know what I'm saying? And I would have loved for her to be in the space to be able to say, not all cases turn out the way you want or expect them to.
Oh, there's a white van parked outside of my house.
You gotta look at my window too. But yes, taking that seat won't be easy, because granted, and believe me, if Melba does win this, what?
Like that's fucking. What is this? It's a white man.
Camera in case
white man outside of my house. So y'all I'm not paranoid. That's what that van. What is this van doing outside of my house, Jill?
That's what I'm saying. Make sure you get it on camera if your ass disappears.
Let's go out there real quick.
I'm about to say, get the license plate. You gotta get the license plate on that one. And listen, this game is real, y'all.
What is?
But all the suspect sketch was garbage, giving her too much credit on that domestic violence bullshit. You need to.
No one's giving her credit.
Mark Smith said, "You need me to slow roll by." Kathy, Trevor said that's Kathy trying to pull up. They coming to get your disrespectful ass. You are under surveillance, Star X. Eric Petty said you are under surveillance. Oh my God, that's funny.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about doing my work in South Florida and then like living somewhere else because
yeah, once we finish shit, we're gonna have to.
No, and it's really hard being in a space where you're attempting to make change because I'm joking around with the van, but I'm joking and I'm not joking. But
I was gonna say it is right behind you.
So so I know that people are really upset with the state attorney's office, and I just want her to be able to, I just put myself in her shoes. If I were there for 27 years, there's a level of arrogance, there's a level of dismissiveness, there's a level of you don't understand what this, it's a level of that. And that's whether that's her or anybody else, right? When you've been entrenched and just, I can only imagine the shit she knows. I can only imagine the shit she's seen. I can only imagine, so I don't want to be someone that's naive and just like, oh, this, I want her to have an opportunity to explain to us, not necessarily how we were being explained about the way the law works and all this other stuff, but be human and talk to us and say, hey, listen, I understood what you guys saw. I saw that. And when I saw that, these are the things that I did to ensure that these guys were brought to justice. But then when she started talking about, well, the correction officers had families, and we had to think, what? Like, why did they put that guy in a room with boiling water? Like, I don't give a fuck about that. Like, I need you to talk about that, right? Because when you then you go and you say, oh, well, you have to also look at the victims. That was very confusing for me because that guy was a victim. Even though he was a schizophrenic in jail, he was a victim. And so when you talk about, you have to think about the victims. Kathy, did you see him as a victim? Because you saw the families of the correction officers as possible.
And see, that's the piece that's like, I will tell you, when she goes on those, and one of the reasons why she's lasted so long is that she gets in them soliloquies that don't give you enough space. Because if you have been able to ask that right in that space, you know what I'm saying?
Because she does a nice job.
She is a master when it comes to that, because the arc of her conversation is like, it's like double dutch. You can't jump. I mean, if you had been able to jump in there with that right in that moment, you'd have got a real authentic moment out of her. You know what I'm saying? But by the time she finishes that, the question doesn't make sense. You have to go all the way back to, well, when you said this, what did you mean? And it's hard to catch her in the moment. She's very, very, very good at that. So Janae, you miss Kathy. It was only she's only here for a half hour. Really, the rainy was like, we didn't really get past that. There's so much other shit to get to that we didn't get to.
Yeah, no, I'm going to
because it's a very
no. So what I will say is this. Even though this is an election, and I think that if Kathy Rundle wrote a book, I would want to read that book. And I would also want to, I think she can do a masterclass on what she just did on this show. Like, that was like, when people watching it from the outside say like, oh, she owned the show, in some respects, I can definitely see how that happened. Because we ask questions that are important, and the way that she structured her answers was both informative and at the same time not saying anything at all. And so I think that was something that,
I mean, but do you think, you see, I don't agree that she said nothing at all.
no.
Like she told you, I think what she said, one of the what I took away from her that will help.
Someone said, why read her book? She won't admit
lying. Okay, but that's the same thing, Eric. I mean, who on this thread would have told a lie, a major lie, and then admit, yep, I lied through my damn teeth, and I lied because whatever. That's just not fucking human. She would go to her ass out of them questions just like a politician, right? Shit, I wouldn't. What would you expect of her? She's a white Hispanic. Those cultural differences don't negate her privilege. She's done little for marginalizing groups, including the Black community. Okay, but Anissa, come on now. It's the first time we're going to disagree. Do you really think it was just her Hispanic was enough to negate the fact that she was a woman in that office, and she is a woman that has stayed in that bitch for 27 years? You don't think that behind her?
Listen, I don't care. I know that people have, and the reason why I would read her book, Eric, is that I've learned over the years, when you see someone like that, and mind you, she has a sizable Black support, right? It's not like she's not.
Don't get right. Don't get it. Y'all talking a whole bunch of shit.
Black people, like she has a sizable Black support. Melba is in an uphill battle, and it's going to be a very interesting race. And I think there was a statistical tie that came out that's where they are right now. And so my thing is, and I say that I someone that's like, you got to remember, Melba considered Kathy as a mentor at some point. And so this is a very interesting dynamic. And we do have to understand that this person has been able to be in an office as a woman coming after Janet Reno, who there was a lot to be imagined with Janet Reno, actually. And Black people praise her, but Janet Reno wasn't good for Black people at all. She was awful. And so, people.
And that, to your point, Stars, they both came up under Janet Reno. And then we're talking about being we're done about being
I gotta go. Fuck.
It's 11:30.
Yeah, I got a review at 12 on Miami Beach.
Good. I gotta take my dogs to the groomer. Okay.
All right, you guys. We'll see you guys next week.
Listen, we might have to do a night because they still got a lot of shit to talk about. So if y'all want to come back later, I'm down. Let me know.
All right, you guys.
All right, later. Peace.